Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Robert, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. What time is it there?
It is 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Same here.
1 o'clock in the afternoon. Same o'clock, Mr. Wolf. I didn't ask. Thanks for giving us your location. Anyway, but anyway, yeah, Mr. Wolf. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. You mind if I ask where we're calling out of?
Well, where am I? I'm somewhere in Florida.
Florida. Okay, all right. Not too far from Rob. Rob is you're on the East Coast, right, Rob?
I'm in Kentucky. So I think depending on where in Florida, that could be like 800 miles. Something like that. Feels like it anyway. I drove down there.
All right. Well, we're going to start off today with a quick friendly fire round. So you guys ready for that? Friendly fire? How you guys like that? How you guys like the little intro I made?
That's new. I haven't seen that one before.
Yeah. It's new. All right, Rob. So you guys can both answer this. What is your favorite hair band? All-time favorite hair band? Which is 80s rock, I would say.
Oh, hair band. Oh man.
I'm very eclectic, so it's hard for me to say any particular one band. I suppose Twisted Sister is a pretty good one.
Twisted Sister.
What's one for you?
Oh, that's a tough call. I would have to say maybe Hammerfall.
Either Bon Jovi or one of those. Never heard. All right, Starburst or Skittles?
Depends on the flavor, but probably Skittles.
I'll go with Skittles.
All right. Actually, I haven't eaten Starburst in years because I live in South Korea. But okay, if what would you want to be? I'm going to assume Mr. Wolf would be a wolf, in case he's not already a wolf.
I missed that question. Could you ask it one more time?
If you could be an animal for a day.
Oh.
And I'm assuming Mr. Wolf would be a wolf.
Actually, I'd probably pick a parrot.
I'd probably go eagle or hawk, something that would let me fly really high.
Yeah, get a chance to fly around. Yeah, get a chance to fly around.
I've walked. All right, if you're a wolf or something earthbound, like I've walked places. I know what it's like to walk places. I mean, why not change it up a little bit?
Also, if I'm a parrot, I can still talk.
I don't know. I don't think I'd want to hear Polly want a cracker too many times.
I actually own a parrot. I have a sun conure. Yep. Lost him.
Did you lose him? I think we lost him.
I guess so.
Yeah. I mean, although he didn't say it had to be a living animal, maybe dinosaur? Is that an option?
Oh.
Can I just go around as a T-Rex for an afternoon?
Birds are dinosaurs, so we're good.
Well, yeah. I mean, but I mean one of the cool ones, like a T-Rex.
Can you guys hear me?
You're coming in a little weird, a little echoey, but yeah, I can hear you.
I forgot to turn off my VPN, so that sometimes really slows me up. But okay, let's get right into the topic. I'll have to forego the rest of these questions. But okay. So first and foremost, Rob, we're going to be talking about wokeism. So can you tell me how you define wokeism?
Yeah, sure. I don't usually like to let other people define what they consider to be their opponent's terms. But on this one, I'll make an exception. DeSantis's lawyer had to define the term woke in open court. And his lawyer described it as The belief that there are systemic injustices in the American society and there is a need to address them. I'll accept that definition.
However, we have a second definition to work with, which we probably will be what is probably more what we're talking about today. Well, first of all, I was looking at Merriam-Webster, and actually lists kind of both definitions here. The first one being aware of and actively attentive to important social facts and issues, which obviously fits pretty much what was said there. Mm-hmm. Though the second one is more of the derogatory term, which we usually come across with how conservatives are using it. Politically illiberal, as in matters of racial or social justice, especially in ways that are considered unreasonable or extreme. I think we can also add in insincere and performative into that as well.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
so.
Since we're using
that's interesting.
Yeah, I think since we're using these two definitions, the left and right are basically talking past each other. All right. Well, if you want, I can get into the history of the term woke. If anyone's interested.
Yeah, you can keep going.
Sure.
Keep going.
All right. All right. Well, the term woke actually comes up from earlier phrase. It's waking up in the 1920s. It was in the 1930s that we got the term "stay woke." And this is explicitly associated with the Black Americans need to be aware of racially motivated threats and potential dangers. It was until the 1960s that it developed a broader term in the term that was defined in that core and in the first definition I read. It's in the it's by the it was in the 2020s when we got the more derogatory term developing.
Right, and I do want to come in and I guess depending on who's using it, it can be used as a pejorative, like seen as a negative thing. So, yeah. But I mean, I would describe in the far left, the answer to like MAGAism, Make America Great. It's basically the extreme left-wing version of the extreme ultra right-wing Republicans. That's kind of would be my personal definition. It's probably not that accurate, but that's what I've observed. You generally don't see people who are following what you guys read off as far as definitions who are on the conservative end of the term. So I don't know. Have you guys observed that yourselves?
Yes, in fact, asking around, like I said, I've been asking around on what is woke. I go into this Facebook group who's primarily conservative, and they pretty much said what you just said right there. Though I have noticed people on the left and right have, like I said, they kind of talk past each other, and there seems to be a point of contention there, whereas. Because somebody says, "Oh, you're woke." Oh, well, thank you. You're saying I'm socially aware, but no, that's not what they're trying to say to you. They're calling you extremist. They're calling you performative. That's not, so that's what they're meaning. But I think we need to kind of meet somebody, where what they're saying, in that perspective.
So the definition that I just used, I mean, that one was.
Speaking of being woke, I'm falling asleep myself here. Sorry,
you okay?
Sorry, it's 3 a.m. here. I'm almost falling asleep, so I need to be awoke right now. Continue.
So like the definition that the definition that I just used is one done by somebody who is fairly extreme on the right wing. So you have a lot of right-wingers who deny that there even are any systemic injustices in American society, and so there's no need to address them.
Yes.
So they'll never use any version of the word woke that I can think of as anything but derogative, because they're literally saying that there's not a problem.
Yeah, in
Uh,
fact, that actually gets into an issue of how they're using the term, because it's very loose, especially in that part where they're saying, referring to it as an extreme position of the left. So what is an extreme position of the left? That could vary from person to person what they mean by that, to the point
yeah.
where anything being left of center is extreme.
Mhm. Yeah. Before we got started, we were talking about the show Velma. That's actually what made me want to talk about this particular subject today. Uh, it's a pretty bad show. Like, I think it's got what, 6% rating on Rotten Tomatoes and
Last I looked.
1.6 out of 10 on average. I think that was the best rating it got on in general. Uh, it's been said to be like a woke comedy or something like that. Where because the main character Velma attacks white men and men in general like all the time.
Mm,
When there's a scene where the not Shaggy talks about how it's nice to see a rich white man get wrongly convicted, it's treated as what woke people like. And well, given the ratings, it's not. It's just bad. Like occasionally there's some flash of what might be humor. Uh, and I don't think those moments are intentional. I
mm.
just think it's just badly written in general. But it really does speak more to, I think, the creator's issues, uh, and to some degree, maybe her own sense of self-hatred. But that's a whole other thing. But the point is that the idea behind or attacking woke really seems to be accusations that it's, oh, you're racist, but against oh, men against white people, or you're racist but against white people, or something like that. That seems to be often what's meant, with the reality actually being that, well, no, like when somebody is saying, for example, Black Lives Matter, well, sure, the response to that is often, well, all lives matter, but the reason people were saying Black Lives Matter isn't because all lives don't matter, but because one demographic of the population is being treated as if their lives do not.
Yeah.
So it's
That's
not
a
that
good point.
they hate white people or anything like it. It's that they're recognizing that there is a disparity in treatment and the expectation of treatment, from everything from media presentation to everyday interactions with the police officers.
This might get really boring because I think we're just going to sit here and agree with each other.
Well, I don't know. I don't know about that one, Wolf, because I will tell you this, that I have seen a segment of the population who definitely does hate white people, and I
Oh,
don't want to.
yeah.
I don't want to talk specifically about which members of my family, but there's multiple members of my family who have um, said some very anti-white racism stuff, and one member in particular was telling me that they thought that white people were like the worst people, and like basically the Mayans and the people in America were like, just peaceful and just living their lives. And then I started to break down the actual statistics of that, and was showing how, in the Aztecs and the Mayans committed completely mass executions or sacrificing or whatever. And then she was also, sorry, I guess I gave up her gender, but she was also telling me that white people were like made the worst serial killers. And then again, I showed like where the actual worst serial killers who have ever existed have actually came from South America. And like mid conversation, she just hung up on me. Like she's like, "Oh, I don't want to listen to this." Boom. She just hung up on me. So rude. And so yeah, I have heard some pretty. In fact, I'm writing a book right now on racism. Rob releases a book every other week here, but I'm releasing a every other 2 weeks or something like that. But my third book is on racism, and I talk in there why it's acceptable for one side to be racist, to say racist things, and it's not acceptable for the other side. Because if we're talking about racism, blacks openly do and say plenty of racist things against white people, and it's considered that they can't be racist because they're black. I mean, I do want to ask you this too before we get into the next question, but do you think it's possible for blacks to even be anti-black themselves? Speaking about
Sure.
racism.
I mean,
Sure. Yeah.
I could
But
certainly see that. Like, there's always been people who were self-hating to one degree or another. Like, just like there were um, people in the Nazi party of Jewish descent, or who
right,
had. There
good
could
point.
be people who, I think, actually a good example, although not specific to this, but in the show Velma, the creator Mindy, what's her name? Caitlin
Mindy
Kaling,
Kaling.
Mindy Kaling. Um, she repeatedly attacks her own appearance. She strikes me as somebody who is very self-hating. Uh, I could be wrong about that, but that's just the impression I get. And I've heard that other work that she's done has done this in the past. So self-hatred can exist anywhere because
Yeah.
regardless of where we come from and how we're born, we're all born human, and humans can all have the exact same failings. When people talk about how blacks can't be racist, when they're usually saying something like that, they're referring to racism in terms of there's institutional power, all right, to
Right.
actually do harm to somebody.
Mm.
um, and in that sense, okay, fine. I don't consider that to be a particularly useful definition because a character defect is a character defect. The only question is somebody in a position to where they can do harm to somebody because of that defect?
Yeah.
If somebody is racist, they're racist, regardless of where they come from or what they are.
Right.
And the real
Yeah.
question is, are they able to do anyone harm because they're racist?
Yeah.
And that answer is going to vary quite a bit geographically, demographically, economically. So I could certainly see where somebody might use that definition. I just don't consider it to be a good one.
Yeah, I mean, if you're racist, you're hating somebody for or some characteristic like of like
Mhm.
their skin color or something. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
what direction it's going in, and
Mhm.
yeah, in America, yeah, it is primarily you white people who have the power and are
Mhm.
doing a lot of oppression and stuff, and well, and the conservatives, I think, or people on the right, they are concerned that if they lose that power or the minorities take power, or they'll do to them what they've been doing to the minorities all the time. And I hate to
Mhm.
say it, but they're probably right about that because that's how human nature
I
goes.
mean, humans
They
aren't perfect,
the
so it's
people
not like.
the people taking power will probably be like, okay, you've been hurting us all this time. We're going to hurt you back.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Uh,
That
and
is
that's gonna,
interesting.
and that's just going to perpetuate a cycle right there. Because if the scales turn again, then they have well, they've been hurting us for all this time. We're going to hurt them back, and it just
Hold on,
perpetuates that.
Beamsley, can you explain what you meant by this, please? Thank you very much. Um, so okay, so recently there was this horrific, absolutely horrific video of these cops beating this black guy to death, and these five cops, and it was people were arguing that this couldn't have been racially biased because it was five black guys beating their own kind. Because normally when you see these videos, it's white cops beating black people, and so I really stopped and said, it's mostly conservatives who were saying this. I'm like, that's really irrelevant, and they said, well, this can't be white supremacy or white, white whatever. It's like,
Mm.
no, it doesn't have to be white supremacy, or like these people could have genuinely, and I'm not saying they did or they didn't, is just to say that they couldn't have been acting out of racial hatred. They very well could have been. They very well could have been people who hate their own kind. So it was.
Yeah, there's also the flip side to that is how many times have we seen in this sort of violence where it was a white cop against somebody who's black, and it's automatically labeled as a hate crime and based on race, and it wasn't. It was just that the guy was just a garbage person.
The reason I heard behind this, I don't know if this is true yet or not, if it's all come out, but allegedly the guy they stopped was targeted because he was having an affair or sleeping with the ex of one of the cops.
Really? Really?
Yeah, I don't know.
Recently came out or was said. I don't know if it's necessarily true, but allegedly one of the cops involved sent a picture of what he'd done to the guy to the woman. So this may have had some sort of revenge motive.
Well, I would say that would provide a motive, yeah.
All that aside, wokeism usually is also applied to some degree to law enforcement of some issue with our police forces. And yeah, there are issues with cops in the US and how they conduct themselves on everything from, there was the cop who lost his job. He was the captain of a police force. It was over the stop and frisk policy. And he said, we're going to go out there and violate some rights. And that's what it took, getting that on video, on audio, to get the policy to change, because they were setting out to violate people's basic rights against search and seizure. And that's not even the only thing. I mean, it happens all the time. So there's the left saying, hey, we have a problem with the police in our country. And then you have conservatives saying, oh, well, that's woke. You want to get rid of the cops. No, when we're talking about things like defund the police, stop buying them MRAPs and military vehicles like they're soldiers in a war zone.
Unfortunately, people even on the left took it as actually defund the police, as in cut their funding. And,
the funding for all the military stuff they keep getting.
Yeah, but it's actually, they actually had some people actually thinking they mean get rid of the police.
Yeah, should be more specific.
I've actually argued with people on the left on that one, saying thinking they meant actually get rid of the police, not reform them.
For better or for worse, we do need police forces.
Yeah, you do.
But we definitely need reform in terms of what police are supposed to do. Legally, a cop has no obligation to protect anyone. That's just a matter of law. That is case law. That's been case law for decades. That's why nothing happened with those cops who sat outside in, what was it, Uvalde, or however you pronounce that, the place in Texas where a bunch of kids got shot. Yeah. They have no obligation to go in there and help anyone. They have no obligation to put themselves at risk. They're not there for that purpose. Why not? Why bother? I say we reform the police. We make them that exactly their job description and exactly what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Then that would make it a more respectable organization in general. Get rid of the idea that they're in a war zone. They're not. They're there as cops. They don't have the same position as a soldier. They're not soldiers in a war. They're the servants of the population. But you would have somebody on the right saying, oh, you're woke. No, if soldiers in Iraq did the way some cops in the US do, we would be guilty of war crimes. Like, oh, he had a gun is not a reason to shoot somebody. Even when I was over in Iraq many years ago, Iraqis were allowed to walk around with AK-47s. We couldn't just shoot someone for having a weapon. They had to present a threat. But here in the US, he had a gun. Doesn't matter if he made a motion to use it or if it was just said to him to be in the car, or if it was seen, that was reason enough to kill someone. And here in a country where you have a right to bear arms, if that's a reason to shoot somebody, then how do you actually have that right?
So I want to get into the next question, and Rob, feel free to get in and ask any questions here along the way. But okay, so both of you guys are atheists, and I'm a Christian myself. And so, like, for me, I don't have an issue if people don't believe in God. That's not my issue. But my issue is more when you feel I'm not saying you specifically, but anybody feels that they can, they want to eliminate religion or abuse people who are religious. And so the question I have is about having extreme views and about specifically with wokeism. I would say I was talking in the opening about my definition of it. And so the question I have along those same lines is that can people cross the line with this extreme end on either side? So like if people are woke, I actually uh, up until very recently, within like the last couple of years, I might have considered myself woke, but I feel like they've gone into such a far extreme, like it kind of they actually do stuff that actually hurts their own cause. So I'm wondering if you guys can give your thoughts on that.
People can be extreme on any side. That's simply, a matter of fact. But the question, of course, is where do we draw the line? Where is something too extreme? And I think it's going to vary from one issue to the next. I mean, see, there was a poll or a survey, something conducted, I want to say back in the late 60s, mid 70s, something like that. And it showed that only 2% of the population at the time was either conservative on everything or
Mm-hmm.
liberal on everything. Uh, and at the time, this was seen as kind of, it was lambasted because people thought, oh, that means only a very small number of people are actually consistent or are actually fit to engage in politics in some way. And I take it to be the opposite. The way I see it, every issue kind of stands on its own and has to be addressed on its own. It has to be considered on its own merits. Gun rights versus, say, medical care, those aren't necessarily the same issue. You can have differing opinions on how much right somebody has to own a gun versus how much right someone has to medical care. And you're not inconsistent. Those are literally just separate issues. You can be more conservative on one thing and more
Mm-hmm.
liberal on another. Yes, there are extremes, but I don't think there's that many people who are completely extreme on everything.
Yeah,
So I would have to know about a specific instance of what you would count as extremism before I could address whether or not I think that particular thing is going too far.
well, interestingly enough, one of the responses I got when I was asking about woke and wokeism is was a person to find it not strictly a leftist stance, but a pattern of behavior, or especially lack of self-analysis, and that goes on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Is to some, at least maybe one side does it more than the other. The other side does it. I can't I'm not gonna get into that, but there somebody pointed out how wanting for Medicare for all when our medical system is in shambles wouldn't be an example of wokeness.
Yeah, I'm quite positive that the conservatives have their own brand of wokeness, and I guess their brand of wokeness is that like you need to be aware, awake, or whatever, however you want to use that, but aware of like the injustices that are going on. Specifically, I'll just give an example of something that they might use, which is they might say like you need to be actively fighting against like the gender ideology and actively trying to stop certain people from doing transitioning, for example, of
Yeah,
children. They feel like they need to be actively working towards stopping things like that. And so that might be their version of that, of being woke. To get to where Robert was talking about, I will say this, that I guess if you put me on a spectrum, I would be leaning left, like 55 to 45% conservative, because the reality is that both sides have good things about them and both sides have stupid and idiotic positions that they hold to. And the problem is, like, if you start thinking I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat, the most dangerous thing starts to happen is that you start to justify the things that the people are doing inside of your party and refusing to call it out. And to me, when you start to get into that line where you start talking about, well, this side is being dishonest, or this side is being, reckless in their spending or whatever, and then you totally neglect what's going on in your own side, or the hypocrisy, then yeah, you're in some really dangerous territory there.
So
That's
you
part
would
of the
say that.
problem with. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
So you would say that you're maybe a left-leaning centrist.
Oh yeah, that's why our emblem is purple, because mixing a black, blue and red.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
And the R's are inverted on themselves to see the other person's perspective. You like that one too?
Oh yeah, I love that too.
Yeah,
Nicely.
because the whole deal is that like if you're conservative, I really don't. I mean, it doesn't bother me where you vote, or if you're liberal, like that doesn't affect me. I think you have to have a left wing and a right wing for a plane to fly.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a one-sided either way, like your plane is going to crash. So my deal is trying to force people. And I think that's what I dislike most about wokeism, is that it tries to force people. It's like it's not organic. It just tries to force things upon people, and unorganically.
Yeah, I suppose it could be argued that both sides are doing that to some degree.
No. When I talk about this kind of thing, I mean, I hate to ask for specifics. Oh, who am I kidding? I love to ask for specifics. Like, what it would be an example that actually happened. It's actually taking place in the world today, or at least in our context in the United States, where the left is specifically going too far. Something that's verified to have happened.
Well, I think one a couple examples that kind of come to mind is what might we refer to as woke in the derogatory sense that was defined earlier, would maybe possibly.
I mean, somebody can say that, but like, what's a thing that has been done?
Well,
Whereas too far.
I was just thinking that I was thinking probably the whole cultural appropriation thing and the whole manspreading thing would be examples of what I might
have been overseas.
Can you explain? Hold on, I will touch on cultural appropriations real quick, because actually just today, just tonight, I was working on the chapter, and I actually talk about why I believe that everybody should be doing cultural appropriation, taking everyone else's cultures and experiencing them, and participating in them, and even taking them and like mixing up ideas. Because I was talking a bit about cultural, or actually fusion in food, and talking about why that's a really good thing. I was looking at some recipes. I actually saw Japanese guacamole, which I thought that's pretty cool. So they mix in some wasabi sauce in there to give it a little kick. But I believe, yeah, because so that is one way in which I think the liberals have gone way extreme. It's like, I'll give you another example here out of South Korea. There's this group called a Blackpink, and one of the members is like Thai, and she had put like corn rolls in her hair, and a lot of people were saying, "Oh, you can't do corn rolls because that's cultural appropriation," as if like black people are the ones who invented corn rolls or braiding their hair. Lots of people have done that all over the planet. So to say that that was racist or that was cultural appropriation seemed really off base. Another thing, that there's another member of the group, and as you said, she's from Thailand. I don't know all their names. I don't follow K-pop, but the Rolling Stones refer to her as exotic because she's a Thai person singing K-pop music, and because they called her exotic, they were saying that was racist. Like, no, that just describes her. Like, I'm exotic here in South Korea. A South Korean would be exotic in America. Like, there's nothing racist about that,
Yeah, in fact, the whole cornroll or the dreadlock thing was actually one example I was going to give of how cultural appropriation thing was going too far. Where this white girl, she did her hair up in dreads because she just happened to like the look, and she got attacked for it. This is some girl in high school.
What was the other example that you said though?
Man spreading.
Yeah, can you explain?
Where a guy sits in a chair with his legs spread. Because usually if you see a guy doing that, it's probably because his balls are sweaty. It's not because he's showing misogynistic aggression towards women. And if he's doing it where you can't sit on either side of him, he's just being a jerk.
Yeah, some people are just
okay. So that's not the same as that.
No, man spreading.
Okay. Rob, did you want another? Wolf, did you have another example that you could give Rob that specifically is about how liberals are trying to force stuff? I would give the critical race theory myself as a personal example, where they're trying to teach people, like white people specifically, to like feel guilt for all the institutions that have come before them. To me, that seems like good.
I can't really speak on that too much. I don't know enough about it, unfortunately.
So critical race theory is a legal theory. You learn that in law school. And it is rooted in the idea that there's institutional racism in American government and law, and this is an objective fact of reality. I mean, the guys who were behind our current drug war expressly stated in no uncertain terms that they were targeting specific demographics. It is just a matter of historical fact that drugs were sold in minority areas where nobody would care, air quotes, in order to fund certain clandestine operations, to gain illicit funds, and that this has been harmful to a lot of people. It is just a matter of objective fact in history that the modern homeowners association existed specifically, in the words of the creators themselves, to prevent minorities from buying homes. It's just a matter of objective fact that white flight happened. Whites left cities. It is a matter of historical fact that the auto industry in Detroit brought in a lot of minorities to work in factories and then laid them off when white people came back from abroad and terminated all of the people who had been employed, and caused a lot of the situations that happened. They terminated their employees with no severance, and now they're stuck with property and nowhere to go and no jobs. There are consequences to actions that are going to have a legal result and a sociological result. It's not a matter of you're white, therefore you're guilty. Far from it. Exactly the opposite. Hey, here's the situation. Everybody responsible is dead or in retirement homes where they will be dead soon, but you're here, so let's actually address these problems and fix them.
Right.
It's not I'm guilty, therefore I have to be blamed. It's I'm present, therefore I should put out the goddamn fire rather than leave it burn.
I pulled up this thing was something from Perry Bacon Jr., which every time I say that name, I think I'm ordering something off a menu. He's a journalist, and he listed off a number of things that can be associated with wokeness. These are just a few of the things: suffering from systematic institutional racism, and the white Americans' experience white privilege in the U.S. Law enforcement agencies are designated to discriminate against people of color, and so should be defunded, disbanded, or heavily reformed. The women suffer from systematic sexism. Trump's selection into the presidency was not an aberration, but a reflection of the prejudices about people of color held by large parts of the U.S. population. Now, I would disagree with that last one, and I think Trump came in not so much as due to racial issues, but more due to apathy and the loss of crap. I'm losing my train of thought here. A loss of well, we're losing our faith in our government.
Mm. Hey, Mage, is it Mage or Madge?
Mage.
Mage. Grey Wolf. I want to break this up with some quick wolf talk and a little bit of God talk, and then we'll get back to this topic. But are you just like a fan of wolves?
I just happen to like, I just happen to like wolves, and well, I told you the story of how I got the name Grey Wolf.
Yeah. Um, but you're not. But you're definitely not a wolftherian. Robert didn't know what wolftherian is, so could you explain what that is?
Not really.
Oh, you don't know. Okay, it's where people like to dress up like wolves or hang out with
Oh,
wolves.
so
But you're,
basically a furry or a
yeah,
otherkin.
but I was telling Rob it's a step further past being a furry
Oh, so it's
because
basically
actually like
okay. So it's like an otherkin then.
yeah, they'll like hang out with wolves and stuff.
Okay, I
And somehow
hate to be
I
that
could
guy, but I have to. What's an otherkin?
Someone who thinks they inside it are really some animal, or sometimes it's an
uh,
inanimate object or fictional creature.
mhm.
Like a
Yeah.
spirit animal kind of thing?
Oh, right. And Mage, do you mind if I ask you, do you use a icon and um a name and your name to because of the fact that you're an atheist, and you don't want people to know that about you?
No, I just happen to have always used the name Mage. When I took the name, I wasn't an atheist. I
Hmm.
was actually into Wicca at the time, and I was trying to figure out a name to use for a chat forum. I looked down, I saw a Final Fantasy magazine sitting next to me, like, oh, Mage.
All right, so your family knows that you're atheist and everything?
Yep. In fact, I have a few other atheists in my family as well.
Oh, really? So it doesn't cause any issue?
Nope. I have always wondered how things would have gone on with my parents, though, seeing as I didn't start associating with the term until after they passed away.
Oh, oh, right. Well, the
That's
last time I
actually
ever saw my mom, she like refused to talk to me because I told her I was an atheist, and she was so angry at me. Yeah, and then she wound up passing away 4 months later on my birthday. So, but
Yes, that's hard.
Robert's, oh yeah, it was pretty rough. But Rob's a cradle atheist, right, Rob?
What's a cradle atheist?
Born
Like,
atheist, never became Christian or
Oh
any,
no, I
joined.
was once a very devout religious believer. I wanted to be a minister when I was a kid at one
Oh
point.
wow,
Yeah. Um,
yeah.
I became an
You're
atheist much
more
later.
devout than I was.
Yeah, I was extremely devout and very conservative, and I'm glad I'm not anymore.
Uh,
Rob said Rob said he would actually ask for Bibles for birthday gifts or whatever, Christmas gifts.
Yeah.
Didn't you say that, Rob?
Yeah. I was the kid who would I really liked the King James Bible in particular. Uh,
Mm.
Now,
And
even though I'm an atheist now, I mean, you can't really properly study Western history, culture, or anything else without studying the Bible. I think it's an important document, an important book to study to properly understand how we got to where we are. Um, it's not all bad and it's not all fiction, but it definitely has its issues, and I definitely don't believe that there's anything divine about any of it.
so, Mage, what age did you become an atheist, and what led you to be so deceived? That's the question I have for you.
so deceived. The facts. I actually read the Bible, cover to cover. He says that Christianity aside at that point, he tried to, if he looked into other religions, and so none of them really worked out. I figured, okay, maybe everybody just has part of the truth. Tried to cobble something together from that. That didn't work. So I started just calling myself agnostic. Like, and I was talking to my dad. Was one of the last conversations I had with him. He was telling me what he believed, and he asked me, "Well, what do you think? What do you believe?" I hadn't thought about the question for a while, and just kind of sat there for a moment. Like, I don't know. And he says, "Good answer." Later on, I started getting doubting more and more, started questioning things after that more and more. And eventually I was watching atheist experience video with Matt Dillahunty. He was going over, okay, this is what atheist, this is a definition of atheist. Like, wait a second, if that's the definition of atheist, then I'm an atheist. I looked, I kind of double checked it, like, okay, that applies. All right, I'm an atheist.
I would describe Matt Dillahunty as a evangelical atheist. Like, it's not just enough that I don't believe. It's like, you guys are, and he'll say it, you guys are like fucking this and that. He's quite abusive towards believers. He's I find him to be a very obnoxious person.
I've never had any particular issue personally with him, but I have seen him be crass with other people. Yeah.
I haven't seen him in a long time. He didn't used to be that way, that I remember. I remember a lot of his earlier stuff, and he, every now and then, you're sure he might lose his temper just a little bit, but that's just being human. If he's gone kind of more hostile over the last couple of years, that's unfortunate. Honestly, if I ever got to that point, I'd take a break from the whole thing.
That's a good. Well, actually, that will lead right into my next question here that I have. And then, Rob, I would like you to ask a question. Get in here. But is it ever okay to be militant in your ideas? And militant, people describe anti-theism as being militant, militant atheists. As I said, I describe it as, I call it, because I've co-opted a religious term, I call it evangelical atheism, where you want to spread the atheism. And from what I've seen, though, honestly, honest to God, or honest to Darwin, whatever you guys believe in, honest to Big Bang, I have seen the same level of cultish groupthink coming out of the so-called like enlightened group. And I'm just going through 1984 for the third time now, because that's my favorite book of all time.
That is a good book.
Oh, it's my favorite. It's my favorite. But
Scary
I'm listening.
How close we're getting to it, though.
What was that?
Scary how we're getting close to it, though.
Oh, well, I've been to North Korea. And North Korea has used that book as an absolute playbook. It's like almost everything about that book is like verbatim in North Korea. Anyway,
governments, that is not a how-to book.
I know, right? It's a warning, not like a playbook. But anyway, there's a scene where the guy's trying to get the other guy to believe that he has that he's holding up 5 fingers, and he's like, how many fingers do I have up? And the guy keeps saying 4, like, I can't see anything else. And so he keeps electrocuting
4 lights.
Star Trek, Next Generation.
That's exactly where they got it from.
That's what yeah.
Okay, yeah. I don't know what you guys are talking about, because I'm not a nerd. I don't watch that sci-fi crap. But anyway, and you know what? That's interesting what you just said about him saying I don't know, or you saying you don't know, because at some point he gives him electrocution, and he goes, how many fingers do I have up? And he goes, I don't know. And the guy tells him, well, that's better. And then he electrocutes him again anyway. But the reason I'm saying this is because specifically I do want to talk because I did interview a trans person, Gray, right after you and I talked the last time.
I think I watched that one.
You watched it?
I think so.
Okay, so
Amy Newman.
Yeah, we had a very respectful talk. She was a very lovely person to talk to. But I do have a friend. We talked a little bit about it, and the friend is transitioning right now. And I've made it very well known to the friend. It's not at all a taboo topic to say, look, I don't believe this is the right thing for you. I still believe even if you were to transition, you still were to be a man. Doesn't mean that I don't respect you, that I don't care for you. But if you were to tell me, do I think a trans woman is a woman? Like I don't. So you could shock me you could beat me, you could torture me. But that just goes to what I'm convinced of. Doesn't mean that they are not a woman. It just has to be what I'm personally convinced of. So it seems what I've seen from the people in that community is that they want to invade my mind. They want to say, you have to believe this way, or else you're just a hateful bigot, you know?
I've said that I don't think it really matters whether they really are in this case, woman or not. What matters is that they're being treated with respect, that they're being treated the way they want to be treated, that they're being referred to the way they want to be referred.
Sure.
And that would involve treating the person as a woman, wherever context that happens to mean.
Mm-hmm.
No, I would. The question is are they really women or not? We've been looking at the biology of the brain and would suggest as the being female in that respect, whereas the biology of the body doesn't match up, and that's where you get someone being trans.
Well, that's a weird thing to say because
Yeah,
even but hold on, even if I agreed with that, there are women who are a lot more manly than I am. So to think that somebody has a woman brain or a guy brain, that doesn't even make sense to me because there's a spectrum.
Yes,
on
yes,
how,
it is. Yes, there's a spectrum. However, there are certain things where we see more towards one way than the other. But even yes, it is a spectrum. And even within people who are cis, you'll see quite a large spectrum between
right.
brains.
So Mage though, let's just say either way though, whatever I might feel one way or the other, like yeah, that doesn't give me right to disrespect or to try to hurt someone. I would never misgender or dead name someone. And I'm all for making accommodations for trans and non-binary people that don't invade into the privacy of other people. Like I believe everyone should be in a space that's welcoming and safe for them. You know.
Yeah. In fact, I think making changes to these to accommodate this sort of could actually be an improvement overall. For instance, like within locker rooms, if we could switch to maybe individual stalls instead of having one big room, I think I personally would be a hell of a lot more comfortable in a situation like that. And we eliminate the whole argument of what locker room should they use, because they each got their own individual stall then. Or with bathrooms, okay, we do floor to wall stalls. We put a camera outside the stalls, so we don't have we cut down on any kind of violence in that respect. And we got that covered. You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
And that's more secure too, because it's not like a picture on the door is gonna stop somebody who wants to go in and rape somebody. They're gonna go in there and do it anyway.
Yeah, but I get what you're saying, but I mean the likelihood of people going into bathrooms to do that is really small, as it is. But yeah, you could definitely do things to keep everybody more safe. And that's a society I would want to live in, where everybody is made to feel comfortable in whatever space they're in.
Yes.
I would hate to force I would hate to force a transgender woman to go into a population that is all, cis male. That would be really dangerous for them. They would get really abused in that context.
Oh yeah.
But on the other hand, taking a transgender woman and putting them into a cell with a cisgender woman, that could also be potentially dangerous for the cis woman. So having areas where they're either gender neutral or just apart from places where they could be abused, like that would be accommodating to everybody, so that no one is in danger of being abused.
Well,
and I like to see that for everybody.
In terms of prisons. I think we need to do some massive reforms in a lot of areas, and going to more rehabilitative instead of punitive.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm a big believer in going with what's actually going to work.
We don't if this person could be a potential danger to the person they're being put in a cell with, and that
Sure.
we need to do something. We need to maybe separate that out. We can they can still go into these whatever prison, but we gotta do better than that.
Yeah, Rob, what were you saying?
I was saying I'm a big believer in going with what works. Like, the thing about the American justice system is Americans have fetishized revenge and punishment to an absurd degree. Like, our recidivism rate is 70% of those who go to jail will end up going back. On the other hand, you've got a place like Norway, which treats prison as a place to reform people. It's much, much different than the American system. It's not as nearly as punitive, and their recidivism rate is like 30%.
Right.
And the U.S. has the
I
incentive.
presented this data to other Americans, and I said, "Hey, the system that we have isn't working." And the response that I overwhelmingly get is, "Well, we need to punish them. We need to punish them. We need to punish them." Well, what if how can we not? How is this a punishment? Like, do you want somebody to keep doing the crimes that they were doing in the first place, or do you want society to actually get safer?
Right.
I mean, what's the goal here? The whole goal is to get somebody able to assimilate back into normal society.
Right.
And our prison system, as it is, does not do that.
Right.
I mean, it's unfortunate that some people will commit crimes. Yeah, we want to stop that. And I understand that there's a natural human urge to revenge, but at the end of the day, who do you want in the dark alley? That you're going to run into? The guy who just got out of our current system, filled with all its violence and corruption and everything else, and the abuse and so on and so forth, or somebody who went through the system in Norway where they learned to be a more functional human being.
Yeah, you know what? I saw the warden greeting the prisoners who were coming in, and he said, "Look, you guys are going to be my neighbors in 7 years. It's my job to try to get you back to where I'm going to feel completely comfortable living right next to you." And those guys actually live, not that this is saying very much, but those guys actually live considerably better than me. They have some pretty nice apartments in there. So I'm just saying. But Rob, you got a question? If you guys can get in for a second, I need to relieve myself, and so I'm going to take myself off screen. So if you guys could just go on for like 5 minutes. Okay.
Sure. Actually, to address was it Bimsy? The reason in the meme him go whoa, don't go bro, look is accurate. Well, this kind of gets into maybe another definition of woke, because I've heard with in regards to TV shows and movie, he's woke being referred to as something that's where they take social political messages at the expense of storytelling. What would you think about that? So this Velma might be a good example of that.
Velma is an excellent example of that. It's almost more like Velma is like a bad fan fiction of Scooby-Doo by somebody who didn't like dogs and then decided to shove all their personal issues and political views in, regardless of whether or not it fit the story or anything else. So, yeah, basically Velma is just, I don't even look at it as it is bad woke. I just look at it as bad writing.
Yeah, some people have questioned whether I've actually heard some people say, "Hey, it's some kind of psyop up thing that's so bad, where it's just trying to parody the left."
Yeah, I heard that the other day. It's so bad that it's almost believable, but it's also not.
Well, like I said, I tried watching it. I got maybe a minute in and shut it off. So.
Yeah, I mean, the whole opening with cockroaches humping one another and then going into the girls' shower room, and remember these are high school girls. Um, I was real close to turning it off right then because, like, okay, this is not a good start. And the thing was uh, a conversation about how pilots are always overly sexualized in order to grab viewer attention, um, and having that argument kind of breaking the fourth wall kind of thing. It it was just bad writing every step of the way, and I just don't understand how nobody caught any of this at any step of the process. And honestly, I don't know why they renewed it for a second season already, which blows my mind.
Wait, are you guys? Are you still going on about Velma?
Yeah, well, we were talking about how that was like a psyop, and
Well, I was addressing what Bimsy was saying in the chat.
yeah, the whole go woke, go broke kind of thing. Shoving your
So,
political views in a show and expensive storytelling. It was just all, oh, that's an
right.
example of that.
Yeah, I actually really hate when people try to preach, like in movies or in, you know, TV shows like that. Like, I actually, actually watch I actually watch TV and Netflix so that I don't have to think about that shit. So it's like if I'm being indoctrinated now in this, well, I'm going to see a movie like, like that's kind of defeating the purpose. I want to break away from reality for a little bit, and but I am going to check out Velma. I think it's weird that people were so upset about it though, because they're like, oh, you're defaming this classic, you're destroying this classic. But it's like this is Scooby Doo that has a talking dog and a pothead owner who goes around solving crimes. That is actually, speaking about racism, pretty racist TV show, if we're going to be honest, because like 99% of the bad people are always these rich white dudes. Like you could always spot who the bad person is in like the first 5 minutes of the show. It's always going to be the rich dude, the rich white dude. So I always thought it had that element of like wokeism, even back then. But it's not like it's a classic or anything, It's not like it's like Huckleberry Finn or something that they're just taking and co-opting. So it's kind of a ridiculous show in the first place. But I will have to give it, because every time I'm on Hulu, either Hulu or HBO on the app, they literally advertise that on every show that I see. So yeah, I'll have to give it a look. But Rob, do you have a question that you like to where you like to take this talk? No.
No, honestly, I'm surprised we all kind of agree on more of this. I thought we would have more disagreement than we did. So honestly, I can't really think of anything that I need to ask that we haven't covered to one degree or another, or that I hadn't already asked. Like, as far as cultural appropriation goes, I mean, I don't view cultural appropriation as a bad thing. I think that
Exactly.
culture is a gift that we all give to the whole world. One of the greatest examples that I've seen of what people might call cultural appropriation was a Punjabi Celtic blend of music. Which, if you haven't
Wow.
looked at, yeah, go onto YouTube sometime, look up Celtic Punjabi bagpipes, and it
Wow.
blends these classic songs in all new ways. I think
Ironic.
when cultures are more open and people are willing to experience and share
Right.
things with
Mm-hmm.
each other, we get a more creative, more vibrant world. It would be tragic, in my view, if we were all just trapped in whatever section or demographic that we were born into and not allowed to experience anything other than what our own, I don't know, ancestors of some sort or another
Right.
created. I think we're better off and we're better people when we experience other cultures. Now, I think if you're doing it to mock that culture, that's another matter. Like,
Mm-hmm.
blackface, always bad.
Ironically,
Yellow face too.
Yeah.
the term woke, as it's currently used in the positive way, it could fall into the definition of cultural appropriation, seeing as it's originally used specifically for Black Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Interesting.
I borrow from lots of different cultures in order to write books. I borrow from Central American. I borrow
That's because
from
you're not
Far
creative,
Eastern.
Robert. That's a
I
totally
borrow-
different.
It's,
That's a
Hey.
totally different scenario, Robert.
writing
I
a
feel
book.
attacked.
Yeah, writing a book is on my bucket list.
Yeah.
Well, you should hook up with Robert.
I borrow
Right
from
way.
I borrow
yes,
concepts from
I'm
history. I borrow
I'm an
artistic
inspiring
styles. I borrow
writer.
everything, and so does everyone else. Like I don't
Right.
really think that cultural appropriation is. It's treated as a form of theft, but you haven't stolen anything. You've just taken somebody else's idea and
Borrow
done
it.
something.
Borrow it.
Yeah, you've borrowed it and you're applying it in some way, and that's, if anything, that's showing you appreciate some aspect of
Yeah.
another person's culture and
Speaking on,
heritage.
speaking on,
That's a good
on,
thing.
speaking on the cultural appropriation thing, I've noticed that there's a trend. It's kind of seems to have kicked up in recent years. There's of race swapping characters, usually taking like a white character or making them black, and this actually kind of gets into another point on wokeism and all that is if the group that's being catered to doesn't really like it, should that be considered as a criteria for being woke? For instance, with the example of race swapping the character, far as I can tell, most Black people don't like that. They see it as getting a hand me down. They want an original new character created for that purpose. Or another example of that would be like Latinx, where most people who are of Latin descent and don't like the term or don't use.
It's
won't use
Latinx,
the term.
by the way. It's Latinx or Latin.
Oh,
Yeah, let me
what?
get in here. I like Latino just fine. So if you're asking me, I'm Latino, no biggie.
Okay.
I don't need any fancy words. But I will say that I honestly couldn't care less one way or the other if people swap out characters. That's just me. I'm not saying other people wouldn't mind. But the thing is like if it's okay to swap out one characters, it has to be okay to swap out for any race. And so I've seen like this Velma, I think Shaggy is like black, and I think Velma is some sort of Asian, I think. I'm not sure.
Mindy, she's Mindy. She's
Yeah.
Mindy. She's
It-
Mindy
Yeah, she's
Kaling
Mindy. She's
cosplaying
basically
as
it's basically
Velma.
Mindy doing. Mindy just plays herself in all of her things. So she made Velma into a version of herself.
Wait,
Now,
who are you talking about? Hold on, who are you talking about? Who?
Mindy Kaling from The Office, the one who's behind the whole Velma thing.
I don't know.
If you look her up, she and Velma are as she's depicted in the new show. Velma
What is she?
Mindy.
Indian? What is she?
I'm not
She's
sure.
Indian.
No, Indian.
Okay. All right, guys, let's try not to talk over. Let's just try to let each other finish. But yeah, because I know in Hamilton, I guess they swapped out a character to be black, but then whenever it happens the other way around, people usually lose it, and so this is kind of like a double standard that I talked a little bit about specifically with politics, and the thing is for me is like, man, we got to apply everything equally across the board, because either this is okay or it's not okay. So if it's not okay, then let's just stop it, and if it's okay, then let's do it and let's enjoy it. Let's like I don't really have an issue with that, because as it is, they're all fictional characters. You know what I mean? Velma doesn't exist, so if you swap her out for another race, who cares? Like that doesn't really bother me at all. I do want to say another thing though is that like we got to apply just apply it across the board. If using racial slurs is wrong, then Black shouldn't be allowed to use it against their own kind or using it towards other people. We can't make special rules for different groups of society. So yeah, good.
So I think you kind of do. There is some variation here. For example, all right, let's take Nick Fury. Nick Fury in the comics was originally a white dude, but Samuel L. Jackson nailed him so well that they changed him in the comics.
Well, it was actually the change in a different universe in the Ultimate Comics universe.
Was that it? Was that what it was?
Yeah.
But now
So
I
he
can't see
actually
Nick
said,
Fury as anything but Samuel L. Jackson.
Hold on.
Well-
You guys are basically going to argue about who's the bigger nerd out of you two. So I wouldn't feel good about
Hey, that's a whole other. We have to schedule another time for that one.
Yes, we will.
But like, you could swap out. You could hire Denzel Washington to play Tony Stark, and it wouldn't matter because there's nothing about his identity as a character that is tied to his ethnicity. But you couldn't do the same with someone like Black Panther, who was specifically tied to his ethnicity, his heritage, and his origins as being a man from Africa. Turning him into a casting, who Patrick Stewart to play him just would not make sense. And not just because Patrick Stewart is old. I can't just think of any other actor's name at the moment. But
well, I do have some
so
issues.
it really does kind of vary. Like, nobody noticed or nobody really cared when in the what was it, Thor, the guy who was playing the all-seeing figure, I can't remember his name offhand, the character's name. Nobody cared that that actor was black that I saw. I'm not saying nobody did, but nobody that I noticed.
I think that has to do with the. I think that has to do with depending on how how much the character is in the cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah.
Though I do have something of an issue, a couple of issues with it. Is, first of all, race swapping in fictional characters are very two-dimensional in some respect. So changes like even clothes can have a major impact on how people perceive them. And by race swapping a character, you're basically having to win over the audience all over again. And the second problem I have with it is it's more of a in vein of the topic here, is it tends to be used as a weaponization and to shield themselves from criticism of any bad writing. Oh, you don't like our show? It doesn't matter whether if it doesn't matter if you're actually if it has anything to do with the show. It's you just are a racist.
That happened with the Lord of the Rings, like
Rings of Power.
Well, that happened with the Little Mermaid thing.
Right. But again, I'm not a nerd, so I don't get all these references that you guys are saying. But I will say this: Robert is a writer, and Robert has. We actually did a podcast where Robert was talking about character rebellion, where Robert's not even enough of a man to control his fictional characters because they somehow control him. Sorry, that's a joke. But Robert has talked about creating characters with like multiple layers and whole backstories and stuff, right, Rob?
Mm-hmm.
You can speak a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, like in one of my most recent works, which is called Adopted by Humans, it's an alien anthropologist living on Earth and studying human society in the future.
Wow.
So everything is seen through the eyes of somebody. It's told first person. Everything is seen through the eyes of somebody who doesn't have a first person experience with anything. So he has questions about everything from how human relationships work, to how human government works, to how human society functions or doesn't function, dealing with, extremists and xenophobes who see him as an invader. And you have people who are very friendly to him and want him to share in their experience and everything else. So he kind of goes through the stages of experiencing all sides of human society, both good and bad. Writing a character who doesn't have that kind of firsthand knowledge of growing up in a culture is a really interesting thing. It leads you to ask questions, even about why I myself think the things I do and do the things I do that I never would have asked before. That's one of the wonderful things about writing, is you do get kind of exposed to new ideas.
Yeah, you have to put yourself in the other person's shoes.
Yeah,
right.
And think in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, but
think about the villain ethics.
This might be a little off topic if you don't mind my asking. What do you think of these writing AIs that are coming around? Because I've just started playing around with one myself, and
Scary.
I found when I was actually writing my story with it, that and I was actually using it to just kind of get past writer's block. And I noticed as I was going along, I was using the AI prompts less and less. It's kind of wondering what you think. I think it could be a useful tool to have in the toolbox, but we have to be careful with it, maybe.
Yeah. Hold on. I just want to say this, that AI indirectly proves that God exists, because that stuff is demonic and it's straight from Satan. Because I just did a camp where they were using some AI to write some like scripts and stuff. Man, that really freaked me out. So it freaked me out how smart it was, dude. I mean, it really genuinely did scare me. I'm not like a conspiracy theorist. I'm just joking, but yeah, it's pretty crazy. But Rob, Rob's a very, I don't know, how many books have you written total, Rob?
Honestly, I've kind of lost count at this point. I've published, I think 2021. I've got another 20 or so that I need to get ready for publishing. I
Well,
want to have 20 more published by the end of the year. And I'm working on 7 or 8 more right now.
And here I am working on one.
Exactly.
Weaponized ADHD, man.
I am looking forward to the day where AI puts Robert out of business. So, Rob, do you have any thoughts on the AI writing?
I use AI for artwork to some degree to create concept art and take it to my human artists that I hire to do work, and it gives them something as a model to reference. I think AI art and AI writing, it is going to be a thing that we're going to have to adapt to more as the future continues to march on. I don't hate them. I do think that it's one of those, you can either swim against the tide or you can learn to swim with it. Swimming against the tide of technology has worked exactly 0% of the time for anything. We're going to have to find ways to make it work for us rather than against us.
Yeah, they can be
AI
abused.
writing, I may have a use for at some point in the future to come up with concepts or to create foundational works that will have to be modified. I don't know. I haven't touched on AI writing yet. I saw a Batman script once, and I still remember one of the jokes that the script wrote was the Joker gave Batman a coupon for new parents, but it was expired because he is the Joker. I read that like 7 years ago, and I still remember that joke. A coupon for new parents.
That's hilarious. I do want to get to the last question, and then we can close this out with any last thoughts that you guys might have. But if you could kind of sum up how we can live together with different ideas, and how wokeism can be used and incorporated, because, as Robert was saying, a lot of this stuff is just facts. Like you can debate this, you could hide your head in the sand. But some of this stuff is just flat out facts. But how we go about implementing it and making changes, societal changes, that's a bit up for debate right there. And I think if we have everybody sitting down at the table and treating people respectfully and honestly and charitably, we can come to some good, healthy, happy mediums, meeting in the center. So I'm wondering if you guys have any last thoughts, last ideas about that. And it's fun talking to both of you guys, man. You guys were great.
I suppose the question on that would be: is woke in the pejorative term being used to weaponize the language? Is it just being redefined in that manner just to attack liberals?
I'd say a lot of the time it is. Like whenever I've seen it used by somebody on a conservative side of things, it was meant to shut down the conversation and shut down thought, shut down any critical thought. Oh, that's just woke. Okay, how? If we're discussing a problem and you're shutting down the idea that there even is an issue, there's not even a space to compromise because they won't admit that there's a problem.
And that kind of comes back around to my issue with the left on this word, or not acknowledging the pejorative definition.
Yeah. I mean, even if we acknowledge, okay, there's a pejorative version of it, now what? I mean, we can't make people who are just dismissing it as a pejorative have a conversation that they don't want to have. We can't make them address the problem. If somebody shuts down higher cognitive thought and is unwilling to address anything just because they have a pejorative, well, we already know that. Like, if we got rid of that pejorative, they just come up with another one. You can't compromise if somebody's not willing to come to the table. I think that is more likely to breed more of the very extremism that they're worried about. Now, as far as extremism on the left goes with this kind of thing, I don't see that there's been any serious harm done. I can't think of anything legislative offhand. I can't, of course, there could be something I don't know about, but when they're talking about addressing these problems, there are real solutions being presented on one side, police brutality, employment, incarceration, sentencing, access to care, access to resources, access to education. All of these things are being addressed by one side, but then you've got the other that is just shutting down the whole conversation and saying, oh, it's woke, so we're not going to talk about it. Well, where do we go from there?
And that kind of gets into what the question here of how can we coexist. So we need to have an open dialogue with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think having an open dialogue is good, but and a lot of conservatives are not going to want to hear this, but at the core of the problem of modern conservatism is that their position is a losing position. It is inevitable. Time changes things. Cultures change and shift. Think about the conservative position 50 years ago. I can't think of one that is really contested as, well, they might not have been the bad guys. Think about 100 years ago. What conservative position has ever held up over time that isn't eventually eroded and destroyed? Whether you're talking about segregation, general civil rights, sexism, even something as benign, relatively speaking, as economics. Every single conservative position is bound to eventually lose out as the advocates age and die off, and the next generation comes along with their own ideas. I just don't see how they expect it to go well for the conservative side if they're unwilling to have any conversation. You can shut it down, but eventually you'll die and be replaced by people who will have the conversation or who have moved away from your way of thinking as somebody who is on the conservative side. It may take a while, but I mean, where are we now?
Yeah. And you know what, Rob? I do cover this in the book on racism when I talk about like why people generally drive the same way to work every day, and why when software like Facebook, for example, or I use Yahoo Mail, when they've switched up their how they do their messages and stuff, I always like fall into a minor depression because I get so upset with how I'm going to have to learn something new. And then after I learn the new thing, I'm like, oh man, this is like 10 times better than the old way. So yeah,
not
things
always,
change.
Not always.
You mentioned AI. You mentioned AI and just the technology that's emerging. I mean, yeah, this whole world, everybody, the liberals included, Robert, they, we all got to adapt to a changing world. And that's just a reality. When you're getting too stuck in your way of thinking, it is bad either way, either side, right?
Yeah.
Like it used to be long time ago, back when I was very, very, very young. The conservative position wasn't the same as it is today. You would have slower change. They didn't want radical change, but they didn't oppose all change. But now it's very donkey stuck with the hooves stuck in, and I'm not moving. I'm not moving. I'm not moving. That's not going to help the conservative position because their children will come up and be a little bit different from their parents, even if there's some deal of conservatism to them. They're going to be different. than their parents will be. This notion that nothing can change. I've had people who are on the older side telling me, "Oh, I don't support this because I'm old and I don't want to change," or "I
Yeah.
don't believe it because I don't." Literally, they don't want to believe something. Or, okay, well, this is a problem for you, but not for the rest of us to accept. And it's kind of inevitable that things will change. This
Yeah.
idea that, well, we can keep things the same forever is a losing proposition.
Yeah, the thing
Gun
with
laws will change, and marital laws will change, medical access rights to care and whatnot will all change.
To quote,
Whether it changes to the better or the worse is another matter, but
right.
this idea that they're preserving something fantastic and that it's going to stay that way forever is just nonsense. And the more they dig in their heels, the more it's going to hurt them.
To quote the great Tracy Lawrence, one of my favorite songs of all time, "Time Marches On," says the only thing that stays the same is everything changes. Everything changes. Mag, do you do anything online? Do you have a channel or anything?
Oh, I have a gardening channel by the name of Gardens Happen. I don't get into any politics. I don't get into any religion, and I want to keep it open and
It's probably a good thing.
inviting to everybody.
Yeah. Well,
I use this name for getting into my personal beliefs.
I see. Did you have any I think you were going to say something right there at the end of what Robert had to say. Last thought.
Conservatives tend to want to keep things the same, whereas liberals want to embrace change. Though sometimes liberals do embrace change to the point where they're just embracing it for change's sake. Though, if I'm going to be getting into the last thoughts, I'd like to end with a quote from Daryl Davis, if you don't mind. When two enemies are talking, they're not fighting, they're talking. I mean, they might be yelling and screaming, but at least they're talking. It's when the talking ceases is that the ground has become fertile for violence.
Amen. And I do want to close off by saying that Daryl Davis helped deconvert the leader of the largest neo-Nazi organization in America. His name is Jeff Scoop. He's been on the podcast about 4 times. And the book is actually all the proceeds, I'm donating the proceeds to his organization. It's called Beyond Barriers. They're fighting racism and teaching a lot about open dialogue. And actually, this entire podcast was based on Daryl Davis's approach.
Really?
So,
in fact, since I heard about the guy, he's become one of my heroes.
Yeah, actually, stick around and we'll talk a little bit about that. But
great.
So in this case, for the sake of this argument, I am the benevolent Daryl Davis teaching tolerance, and you guys are the racist KKK members that I'm trying to deconvert. No, I'm just kidding. That's a bad joke. But okay, yeah. Anyway, stick around for a quick second and let you guys again. Thank you guys for your time. That was interesting. Always like getting difference of opinions. But here we go. Outro. Cue the outro.